Good morning. Welcome to the Common Read. I'm David Hansen, head of the English department. We're in our 11th year of the Common Read, sponsored by the English department and the Southeastern Writing Center. Over the years, we've been very fortunate in the quality of our visitors, not only as writers, but also as teachers. And we're delighted to have Vaye Watkins to join that list with our Common Read text, Battleborn. First, however, it has become our tradition to begin the Common Read with you, the students, because you're the reason for this event. A mission of our department and of the college is to cultivate a space for the imagination. And our Common Read authors have repeatedly told us how impressed they are with Southeastern students' ability to bring their imagination to engage with these books. This morning, we hear from your classmates in English 101, 102, and 232, both on-campus sections and off-campus, including our dual enrollment students. Students are treating us to poems they've written in response to Battleborn, to essays about the book, and videos as well. In the lobby, we're exhibiting artwork that students have done and graphic narratives. Please take some time to look at these exhibits after the event. I want to welcome our campus visitors, our dual enrollment classes from Maurepas High School, Parkview Baptist, Baton Rouge Magnet, and Central. Following the presentations, we will ask Claire Watkins to comment on what we've seen and heard. Before we begin, let me remind you to be respectful of your colleagues by turning off your phones and putting them away. Following the program, there will be sign-up sheets in the lobby for your classes. Just a reminder about what's coming up. At 11 o'clock, Vaye Watkins will give a Q&A and some readings here, again in the Student Union Theater. And at 6:30 tonight, again, a Q&A and another reading. And also a book signing followed by a reception. Our thanks to the Southeastern Television Channel, which is not only recording the event, but also live streaming, and our thanks to the Common Read Committee and the Writing Center staff, headed by Dr. Landrum, who all make these wheels turn so smoothly. And now I'm going to introduce Heather Botsford, who will introduce our speakers.
Hi, thank you and welcome. Our first work today is going to be a video by Casey Williams and Philip Mosher. And Philip's going to come on stage and tell us a little bit about making this video.
Good morning. Well, unfortunately, Casey couldn't be here, so y'all just have me, which I wasn't quite as happy with because I'm not the talkative one out of the two of us. This video really and truly was his idea. I was more for the drawing, but we're friends, so I let him do this. What we really and truly did with this, we were talking about it, trying to figure out what we were going to do for our Common Read project. We wanted to do good on it, get a good grade for our class, and we were looking at the story of the Spawns, and we really liked their story, so we decided to do kind of a video from George's and Henry's point of view. Basically what we did, we filmed several scenes of Casey as George writing a letter to his son Henry, and just kind of did almost like a flashback to George remembering what all happened during that time period and writing about it to his son after his wife Helen had died. So this was our video.
Maybe I should have never left Pennsylvania. I thought that it was time to retire, to get out of the ranching business. Thought I might get your mother to the ocean, because she's always wanted to see the ocean. But retirement didn't suit me. Too much time for these old calloused hands. It was only 2 months before I came home and showed your mother my plans to buy a ranch. I begged her to move again, just a bit east this time, Sweet Pea. At the heart of the ranch was this movie set mimicking a western boomtown. Maybe it was a set that dazzled Helen. Maybe she was just spoiling me. Maybe she, as a prematurely arthritic woman, recalled the aching cold Pennsylvania winters. For whatever reason, in the end she relented with, "All right, George," and I was just over the moon. The need for our western boomtown has begun to decline. Each year it seems as if we get less and less traffic from the film producers. It was those no-good youngins of the day, all hyped up and fixated on those good-for-nothing, cut-em-up horror films. The real movie work is being replaced with those stupid things. I also had to file for bankruptcy. There was no way to avoid it. Business was just too slow. And your mother was feeling worse than usual, so I had to take her to the UCLA Medical Center. It wasn't long before she died. Renal failure. The coroner's report said that she had tumors were visible to the microscope. Seemed like hundreds of hair-like silver ribbons. Helen always did like silver ribbons. The ranch is falling into decay now. The buildings are becoming worn and weathered. The weeds are pushing up through the soil and the corals. I'm tired. Let the help go. And it's hot here. So hot I have to wait till dusk to go feed the horses. And they get impatient down there in the stalls and kick the empty troughs over. Boy, you wouldn't believe the noise their hooves make against that metal.
The horses were the ones that kept the ranch afloat. I rented them to tourists for self-guided rides through the hills. Occasionally, some of my old studio pals would send me some business, asking for 6 or 8 of the paints for a scene. But I knew they didn't need that many. They were just taking pity on me. I can't take care of the horses alone anymore. A group of teenagers wandered onto my property not too long ago. With my eyesight as bad as it is these days, I could smell them better than I could see them. Gasoline, sweat, and marijuana. They offered to help with chores and maintenance if I would let them camp in the old, empty set buildings. Charlie, the apparent leader, offered to leave a young girl or two with me 24/7 to cook and to clean and even keep up with the laundry. Police raided my ranch. There was apparently a baby born here. Stupid teenagers. Love, George.
Okay, so I did a literary analysis on Wish You Were Here. Vaye Watkins is an American writer and professor. She has a variety of uniquely written works, but the one that stands out most is her book filled with short stories titled Battleborn. Her works have earned many awards, such as the Story Prize, and in 2012, the National Book Foundation named her one of the 5 under 35 honorees. A professor at the University of Maryland analyzes her work to be marked by intricate characterizations, crystalline prose, and clear narrative arcs. And an author named Joe Durabrock, who wrote an article titled Fight or Flight, says that each of the 10 stories in Battleborn forces the reader to create it before she can consume it. One of the works, titled Wish You Were Here, shows how she uses intricate characterizations to portray the theme and underlying meaning of the story, which illustrates how a child can be seen as a blessing, but also cause resentment and a void in one of the parents' life. Marion, the main character, starts to feel as if her life is not how she pictured it to be. She's in a happy marriage and life confined by a baby. Watkins uses many literary devices to convey the theme and meaning of the story. In particular, the characters in the story, along with their thoughts and actions, help the readers understand the theme of self-destruction and despair. The story starts off with the narrator telling the readers about how the young couple is planning on having a child, and how the young woman explained, before the child is anything, it is a catalyst for fights. This sets the theme of the story off by hinting to the readers of what the marriage is like. The young couple starts to embrace the idea of raising a child when they find out that Marion is pregnant. Marion wants to be a good mother, and at first, the experience of being a mother felt satisfying to her. The baby smiles, he sleeps on his father's chest, Marion takes photos. The child wants to see this someday. The insistent need to be the best mother she can starts to drive her off the edge. Throughout the story, Marion starts to realize that she does not love her husband as much as she thought, and that her husband does not adore her the way he used to. The narrator informs the readers that Carter used to be fine with her habits. They are the things he once loved about her. The reader can read this line as a direct thought of Marion's, and it makes the readers feel sympathetic for her. Marion knows that she is self-destructive when it comes to her life. The author gives us background information about Marion's past life, saying that before Carter, her life had been a string of beautiful, aloof men with names like the 4 legs of a very sturdy table. Even now, she had an urge to call one of them up and see if he still knew his way around her. The very fact that she even feels the want to call up one of her past lovers shows how unhappy her relationship and life is. Marion does not wish to live by the confines that her husband wants.
Carter is an important part of the story. He is Marion's husband and father of her baby. He was raised in the suburbs of Seattle by a mother who cooked homemade meals every night for him and his sister. The way Carter grew up and the type of environment he grew up in contributes to why Marion feels suffocated in their relationship and life. In the story, Marion recalls a memory about the first time meeting Carter's parents. The visit was for his mother's birthday, and she was cooking her own birthday dinner. So in the kitchen, Marion wanted to seem helpful. She opened the door of the pantry to reveal a wall of hand-canned fruits and vegetables. In the pantry, Marion said, "I need some air." The author incorporates a vivid description about what is in the pantry, and straight after explaining to the readers, Marion is shown to start feeling anxious and like she cannot breathe. After the dinner with his parents, on the long drive home, Marion sat silently her anxieties, turning them over in her head. She had a tendency of being self-destructive, she knew. One can evaluate Marion's thoughts and actions to the point where she feels that Carter expects her to be like his mother and do the things his mother does, such as cooking home-cooked meals every night. After witnessing how his mother's life was, she knows for a fact that it's not something she anticipates her life to be like. Another way that Carter's character connects to the theme of despair and self-destruction is that he is always disappointed in Marion. The author writes about many instances where Carter is disappointed in Marion. The narrator tells the readers that Marion was an underproducer. Marion tried Mother's Milk herbal tea. She tried Blessed Thistle, a prescription for Reagan. Finally, they went to formula entirely. Another disappointment her husband has endured silently. Carter's actions are one of the sole purposes to why Marion feels desperate and alone. The author tells us that Carter once endured his disappointment in silence, but towards the end, he starts to become verbal with it. He asks her whether she was experiencing any pain from stopping, any pressure. "No," she said. "No," said Carter thoughtfully. "I guess you wouldn't." Carter's words felt like a knife stabbing her in the heart. She was already ashamed that she cannot provide the nourishment of breast milk for her child, and his words broke her. He is cruel to her and emotionally abusive in a way. One last instance is when they are on a camping trip with old friends. Marion goes to drink another beer and says she can feel the warmth of the fire on her back and her husband watching her. She won't look to him, not tonight. She won't see his once fine face droop with disappointment. She feels as though she has been looking to him her entire life. He is the key factor to her self-destruction. Jake is an old friend of Carter and Marion from college days. He is married to Val, and they have 2 children together. Jake plays a minor role in the story, but his character has a major part in it. Jake was one of Marion's past lovers. She said that, of course, she ended up with Carter years later, but it was Jake first. Marion was in love with Jake far before she met Carter, and with them all going on a camping trip, this potentially brought back old feelings. This sets up the reader with a hypothetical question that Marion might be thinking. What if she had ended up with Jake instead? Would her life be better? Would she truly be happy? The author gives us this information as a setup to what happens next in the story. Jake's character gives us an idea of just how bad Marion's self-destruction and loneliness really is. On the camping trip, the whole group sits down and starts drinking and smoking, reminiscing about the good old days. Carter and Val soon leave, leaving Jake and Marion remembering together. Jake asks Marion, "Remember when you pushed Miles in his fish pond," he says, "at Corinne's parents? Remember?" Marion nods. She remembers everything. Those last words can be read in a way to interpret that she misses her old life. She remembers everything. Straight after reminiscing, Marion tries to make a move on Jake. She hooks her fingers in the waist of his shorts, and eventually Jake rejects her and laughs it off, saying, "My God," he says kindly, "what a nightmare you must be." His words hurt Marion because the man she was once in love with rejected her and took it as some kind of joke. This contributes to the theme of self-destruction because Marion is fine with risking her marriage and Jake's marriage to relive her past life. She craves her past life so bad because the life she is living just does not feel right to her. She feels empty. Throughout the story, the theme of self-destruction and despair and the whole meaning of it is clearly shown. The author used many different types of literary elements to help the reader interpret the meaning and theme, but her use of the character's thoughts and actions contributed the most because the author knows that it is easier for readers to understand tone and actions rather than find symbols and figure out the meaning behind them. The story is also relatable to some people because most people feel like their life is not how they pictured it to be or how they wanted it to be. Vaye Watkins does an excellent job of using literary elements to connect characters to the theme and meaning of the overall story.
Okay, next I'd like to welcome to the stage Logan Kennedy and Taylor Viscardis, and they're going to read their poems. You guys want to come up together?
So I'm Logan. I'm going to be reading my poem about the sisters mentioned in the story. Sibling sisters, surprisingly so, such scary sensations, sending shivers sliding down spines. Satisfaction never sustained, such as sisters scrape. Baby blade baby bathing in bliss, believing beautiful blatant facts, borrowed from bases far, far back. Breathing in bothered breaths, breaking before her blood sister's door. Claire carelessly creating croaks, confidently coming close, calling her cunning sisters curt, comprehending her kin's charge, a Cheshire cat smile appearing on her face.
All right, I'm Taylor, and I wrote mine about Darla. All right, so I want a better life, maybe even one day to be someone's wife. People here view me as a prized possession. Men keep coming back for a brand new session. Every night is a new adventure scenario. Everyone who doesn't come here just thinks we run a rodeo. It feels like I'm reading a book, stuck on the same page. I sell myself just to make minimum wage. Making other people happy, but no joy for me. I'm hurt and broken, but no one here will ever see. I fantasize having these wild dreams to fly away into the sun's beams. Everything seemed hopeless until you walked in. You saw me for me and not all my sin. A total innocent foreign stranger. When you're around, I never feel any danger. I'm thinking you're my way out. We're drinking our way out. You keep coming back night after night. I don't know what it is, but something feels right. We just talk and talk for hours upon end. It's like you were swept here by the wind. We both have different lives, different stories, different paths. You're coming up with crazy plans, why I'm hoping that it lasts. You want to run away from this place and never look back. I say okay, and you go away to pack. Everything seemed hopeless until you walked in. You saw me for me and not all my sin. A total innocent foreign stranger. When you're around, I never feel any danger. I'm thinking you're my way out. We're running our way out. It comes to the morning when we'll finally get away, but you never mentioned that there was a price to pay. I was never able to see your face again. I guess neither of us can consider this a win. You said you loved me from the very start. I guess that wasn't enough because one of us had a part. I was thinking you were my way out. I guess I was my way out.
Thank you. Now Andrew Butler will come read his essay.
All right. Good morning, if I may. This is my literary analysis on the writing from Battleborn, namely the short story Rondina al Nido. So it's titled Battleborn, Buchanan, and Blanche. The author Claire Vaye Watkins is persistent when it comes to symbolism in her short story Rondina al Nido, which is from her book titled Battleborn. While using machine-like writing techniques, Watkins still manages moments of powerful creative writing interlaced with repetition of certain qualities to drive her points home. What is especially interesting is how Watkins nearly mimics famous writers from the past. In Rondina al Nido, Watkins uses similar methods of symbolism like that of F. Scott Fitzgerald in his novel The Great Gatsby, and in Tennessee Williams' stage play A Streetcar Named Desire. Yet she still concocts an individual style that sets her equal with these great writers, not below them. Where Watkins' writing relates to the methods of the award-winning novelist F. Scott Fitzgerald is in her use of color to describe, portray, and symbolize. For example, both authors use red and blue to represent the intensity and illusion respectively. Watkins states that the boys will have their scent of damp redwood and the sharp angles of that region's mountain lions, signifying their predatory nature and hunger. Fitzgerald did similarly with the quote, red-belted ocean-going ships that represent Gatsby's passion for Daisy. And in reference to the blue symbolism, Fitzgerald used to depict the Gatsby's illusionary dreams of romance, which is seen in his blue gardens and water separating him from Daisy, while Watkins uses, quote, peacock blue eyeliner, end quote, to hide away Lena and our girl's innocence during their time in Vegas. But before focus grows too intent on blue and red, consider that these are basic ideas of these colors. Blue is beautiful, red is ferocious. The real colors of interest in both authors' stories are gold, yellow, and white. Unlike red and blue, these colors require more effort to interpret when used descriptively. Watkins and Fitzgerald used these very similarly, though. White is something to depict innocence, while yellow and gold represent greed, corruption, and deceit. Our girl in Rondina al Nido is described as having once white tennis shoes and ankle socks, briefly before the story undergoes telling us in detail how she undresses entirely and proceeds to wash her undergarments with soap in the workplace's restroom. The imagery given here is upsetting as you learn of a 16-year-old girl who willingly strips naked in a public restroom without any given reason why. It just happens. It depicts to the reader how our girl has become numb to the activity and has lost her human fear of nakedness. Fitzgerald writes a very similar idea in The Great Gatsby. The idea is spoken by the character Daisy in an almost dismissive tone. Our white girlhood was passed together there in Louisville, our beautiful white, and before she can finish her thought, she is cut short by her husband, Tom Buchanan. It is interesting that both our girl and Daisy have a moment to show that they were once innocent before the story goes on and reveals the ugly and corroded inner core that they now possess. In fact, that is why Daisy's name is so significant to her character. A daisy is a flower with fragile petals as its exterior, but possesses a striking yellow center. Which leads to the next color, yellow and gold. In The Great Gatsby, the imagery of yellow and gold often mix with wealth and wickedness. Things are often described glimmering and happily yellow early on in Fitzgerald's story, but towards the end of the novel, the yellowing of trees and similar imagery depict trouble or decay approaching. For example, the penultimate incident that results in Myrtle Wilson's death was caused by the recklessness behind the wheel of a yellow car. Another example is in Gatsby's quickly eroding calm demeanor, where he proclaims Daisy as his golden girl. The greed and soul-sucking nature that is represented by gold and yellow consumes completely and will do so to anything. Even purity, in the case of Rondina al Nido. Gold takes more of an overwhelming wealth and power role in this story. It appears as an enormous gold lion initially to show on a surface level how wealth can be misunderstood as a strong and regal in its qualities. But Watkins breaks down this facade by recalling another golden lion that existed before and was destroyed and toppled in order to appease a small group who is dissatisfied and make even more money for the faceless company. Gold appears again, more fittingly this time, as a garbage can, which is a subtle reminder as to what physical and material wealth truly matters up to. And finally, gold appears in the scene where Lena and our girl are attacked as the bed spreads upon which the rape occurs. The girls came in search of something they thought they wanted, but lost something they had, Lena's virginity and our girl's bond with Lena. And similarly to Fitzgerald's story, we watch as the purity comes to, quote, shrink and yellow, end quote. Light plays a large role in symbolism. In most scenarios, it is seen as the redeeming or saving quality. A light in the darkness is seen as a ray of hope, which coincidentally is another way to show light's relation to positivity. But in the sense of Tennessee Williams's stage play, A Streetcar Named Desire, light is understood as blinding and revealing of all our insecurities and shortcomings. The character Blanche hides away in shadows for fear of revealing her lack of youth to people. Similarly, Watkins uses light to reveal something about youth, but rather than a lack of it, she depicts a loss of it. Watkins uses light to allure and mislead. In the script of A Streetcar Named Desire, the very first scene that Blanche appears in is preceded by a description of her. It reads, "She continues to laugh. Blanche comes around the corner carrying a valise. She looks to a slip of paper, then at the building, then again at the slip of paper, and again at the building. Her expression is one of shocked disbelief. Her appearance is incongruous to the setting. She is daintily dressed in a white suit with a fluffy bodice, necklace, and earrings of pearl, white gloves and a hat, looking as if she were arriving at a summer tea or cocktail party in the Garden District. She is about 5 years older than Stella. Her delicate beauty must avoid a strong light. There is something about her uncertain manner as well as her white clothes that suggests a moth. It is interesting that the thoroughness of this description also mixes a very blunt character fact. Blanche is depicted as fragile and fearful, yet appears dressed to represent a moth. How strange it is to be attracted to something that causes you harm. However strange, this is exactly what Watkins gets at in her writing, as well as in our girl's characteristics of becoming sexually aroused in moments of danger or pain. Masochistic in her actions, our girl does what she must to appease her needs. What is also interesting about this is how Watkins opens this story within the overall short story. Rondina Al Nido is the reflection of a now 30-year-old woman on her past experiences as a 16-year-old girl. But right before the retelling of the story, we are informed that, quote, 2 candles, the man's idea, will flicker feebly on the nightstand, drawing moths against the window screen, end quote. Both authors use this analogy of like a moth to a flame to signify that often we as humans succumb to desires that harm our well-being. But Watkins keeps the luring of the light going. Las Vegas is compared to a, quote, great glistening lake of light. The ceilings of New York suggests, quote, stars glittering at twilight, and even a large black glass pyramid that emits, quote, a thick rope of light supposedly visible from space. All this wondrous and mesmerizing imagery of light draws both the reader and the 2 girls deeper and deeper until it is all past the point of no return. The rape happens abruptly, and the wonder of the lights is shattered, leaving only the scene that is described bluntly as, quote, his bare ass glows blue in the light of the TV, and he holds his dick in his hand. Now perverse and inescapable, the light swallows the girls and burns away their being. All the grueling and dismal ideas aside, it is hard not to appreciate Watkins' use of language, imagery, and process. She writes like the famous writers of the past and even expands further on their ideas than they did. And what is most impressive is that she does so all within a single short story. This is but a small example of her capabilities as a writer and author. And for that, it brings hope that the modern writer still possesses the skills of the past. If anything, the art of writing is still being honed, sharpened, and improved. Watkins has earned her place among the likes of Fitzgerald and Williams, and at such a young age that it truly is inspiring.
Now we have a video by Bill Hood. It's a scene from The Diggings.
California, 1942. Errol and his brother Joshua sit around a campfire, frustrated with their inability to become rich during the gold rush. When all of a sudden, it seemed as if their luck had turned around.
Oh my God, Joshua Gold! Look! You're so full of it, Errol. That's on video. You.
Wait, I didn't do anything! Get off! Errol, stop! Get off of him! You had it all! Joshua, it's clear. They had it all along.
Now I'd like to welcome Jake and Rachel to the stage to read their poems.
This is a poem entitled The Writer with a Noble Past. Vaye Watkins, who writes with great passion, knows of her dad but did not live through his actions. She writes of her past and presents it as stories she has learned from her dad but shies away from his glory. The story of a baby who might be her sister to the story of Darla who would meet a rich mister. Her stories may be far-fetched and not so true, but they open our eyes so that we can see her view. Although her writings may be obscure, we learn from her that through all things we can endure.
My poem is about Darla. It's titled Mirror. She's trapped in a reflection, asleep with the sun, lulling to the coos of peacocks, and she rises with the stars. In her dreams, she sprouts wings, shatters the glass, but when the sun sets, every wish fades away. And oh, how she wishes she could escape, walk in the sun, feel its rays warm her skin. It's like she's in another world. When most everyone is asleep, she's shining bright. Every smile she wears is a mask, every dream a withering flower. Italian cities and beaches so far away, and she would do anything to get there, even lie to your face.
Thank you. Now I'd like to welcome Alexis McCurdy to the stage to read her essay.
I just have a question for the audience real quick. Raise your hand if you ever kind of altered your appearance to somebody or lied about who you were, kind of altered who you were about yourself. Raise your hand. Well, I feel this is kind of like the same way Battleborn is written. In the first story, we all know that it's about her life. It connects to who she is and her whole story about where she came from and how it all started. But just like how we do, bits and pieces of that is true, and then some of it is kind of over exaggerated for viewers just to seem more interesting. So since the first story is about her life, we are led to believe that the rest of the stories are about her life as well. So for your favorite series on like Netflix or anything like that, the very first episode is about what the rest of the series is going to be about. For example, my favorite series is Dexter. So in the first episode, we know that all the rest of the series is going to be about how he enjoys murdering people, about his life, and about his sister, and all that kind of stuff. So since the first story, Ghost and Cowboys, is about Claire Watkins' life, we know that kind of all the rest of the stories are going to follow that kind of same pattern. So if we look at the other stories, they're told in very specific details that it almost brings you in the room with the author. So since it's told in such details, we can kind of tell that it's kind of part of her life. So I just want to touch on this real quick. I know the book is marketed as fiction, but if we read what creative fiction is, the primary goal of creative fiction is for writers to communicate information just like reporters, but to shape it in a way that reads like fiction. So, example of creative nonfiction is like a memoir. Whenever I was writing my memoir, I knew that I did write about my life, but I did alter some parts of the memoir to make myself seem more interesting so that whoever was reading my memoir, it sounded more interesting. So I had to make my writing seem somewhat interesting. Sorry. So I feel like this is kind of connected, similar to how she writes Battleborn. So, for example, we all know that her father was part of the Manson family. So she writes about that, and we have factual evidence to connect that to real life. Another example would be in the book, she kind of writes about how her father is the main producer of the young women for the Manson family, and then he just dies. But if we look back at the situation back in history, we find that he does leave the Manson family and he does go to the police and testify against them. So why does she do this? Why does she kind of alter that part of history? I feel she does this to make the book seem more interesting. Which version would you pick? Would you pick the one where he was kind of like this bad guy but in the end he was good? Or would you pick where he was this man, he would bring these young women to the sex cult, and then he just died? In my opinion, I would pick the more dramatic version, because that just seems more interesting to me, and a lot of readers would feel that way as well. And I feel like this is kind of example on how we represent ourselves to others. We alter ourselves and we lie about parts and bits of ourselves to make us more liked by others. And this is not just something that just started. This has been all the way back to our ancestors. At the time our ancestors shared their planets with woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers, no one wanted to be left behind. Coming together in groups was necessary for survival. Today, our greatest predator threat is our own species, both physically and socially. Regardless of the threat shifts, the need for acceptance and the fear that we won't be accepted remain powerful influences on our thoughts and feelings. And some statistics about this and physiology today. In one study, my colleagues and I conducted two groups of people, 77 college students and 70 others, kept diaries every day for a week of all of the lies that they told and all of their social interactions lasting at least 10 minutes. The college students lied in about every 3 of their social interactions. The other people from the community lied in every 5. Over the course of the week, only 1% of the college students and 9% of the people from the community claimed to have told no lies. So a lot of people may ask, why do you think she wrote this book? What was the purpose of her writing this book? I feel the purpose of it was to know the story you're telling to others, know how you say it, and be careful what you're saying to others. Thank you.
Now I'd like to welcome Hannah Carter to the stage to read her poem.
Hello, my name is Hannah Carter, and I'm reading a free-form poem I wrote inspired by Virginia City, and it is titled Union. I do, she whispers. My ears ring with the volume of her words. I feel the breath of them on my face, and they cause my heart to pound. Her hands feel so warm within mine. My own are cold, frozen by nerves. I focus on absorbing her heat, trying to calm myself. The man beside us speaks, and I answer. I do. My body burns with the truth of it. I can feel it in my face, down to my toes, and in my hands when she squeezes them. You may kiss the bride, he says, and my breath stops. My love pulls me in and kisses me. Her breath is hot, her lips wet. They move against mine in a hypnotic dance, and I join in. Her tongue washes over my teeth like the tides, asking me to dive in. I feel weightless, lost in her warmth. I place my hands on her hips to ground myself, to remind myself that this is real. Her fingers pressing on the back of my neck are real. The shivers they send down my back are real. The bottom lip I hold between my teeth is real. The passion with which she is kissing me must be real. It has to be. How could I imagine this? She pulls away. Dudes, our pretend priest says, that was fucking beautiful. My pretend bride laughs, sounding like wildfire. I know, right? I too laugh at our fake matrimony, fake like the plastic bouquet she dropped when approaching the altar. As lifeless as her feelings for me, I laugh at myself for thinking any of this was real, for thinking I could have this when I've always known I couldn't. I laugh because the union of two women is hilarious. I laugh at the pitiful excuse of a chapel we decided to disgrace. I laugh because this is what we do. Everything we do is fake, and I forgot.
Okay, and finally, I'd like to welcome Brooke Thompson to stage.
So this is my literary analysis of Graceland. Motherhood can often be viewed as a challenging yet rewarding journey. However, certain factors can prevent women from being fit to take on this major role. Some women do not have the money, but other women find themselves struggling with even bigger issues. In Graceland, a short story by Claire Vaye Watkins, the narrator, Katie, is struggling to pick up her broken pieces after suffering the loss of her mother due to suicide. Katie's mother struggled from mental illness, and this inhibited her ability to be a positive role model for her daughters. In this short story, Katie struggles to face the fact that her mother chose to end her own life and expresses her anger towards her for making this decision. Within Katie's rage towards her mother, her sadness deepens also as she finds herself contemplating her own existence. Her inability to cope causes an internal battle, and this puts a strain on her relationships to those she holds dear, such as her boyfriend Peter and sister Gwen. The growing depression of the loss and confusion about her mother's circumstances causes her to push away the people closest to her. The short story points out 3 relationships that help depict the character of the narrator, Katie. That being the relationship between her mother, boyfriend, and sister. The author, Claire Vaye Watkins, uses each of these relationships to help us better understand the overall meaning of the story. The internal struggle Katie is having is depicted well within her relationship with her boyfriend, mother, and sister, and also through various symbols such as the movie Dumbo. The author, Claire Vaye Watkins, points out that depression can be a cycle that repeats itself, and the character Katie fears her unborn niece will have to face it one day too. According to the article Claire Vaye Watkins on Growing Up Manson and Battleborn, several months before she moved to Ohio, Claire's mother, an alcoholic who had relapsed, killed herself. Through the main character and narrator, Katie, Claire Vaye Watkins is able to show us how death, abandonment, and loneliness changes a person's perspective and makes them question their own purpose. Thank you.
Claire, can you come up and comment? Claire Vaye Watkins.
Hello, good morning. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you especially to those students for sharing their work. It's a real honor to have folks read your stuff, and perhaps even a higher honor to have folks forced to read your stuff. So I'm very grateful and really impressed with the kind of attention and complication and care that I saw in each of those pieces. And you did my work a great honor by paying attention to peripheral characters and dark themes. And I know it's probably not a walk in the park to spend so much time in work like mine, but every single presentation I saw going towards the confusing or the difficult or the sad or the brutal, and that's an extremely important endeavor for our society, to continue to go towards those things that we maybe don't understand or we can't quite grasp why. So thank you so much for doing that, and I hope you continue to keep doing that in all your scholarship. Just keep going towards the thing that you don't understand and the thing that scares you and the thing that is still with you anyway, even though perhaps you might want it to be gone. Yeah. So I think it's really quite inspiring to see young people doing this kind of work, and I thank you so much for doing it.